Hello. Have you ever wondered how large computer installations are maintained? I know that before I started my career, I'd always wondered about that. And it's changed a lot over the years. When I started at CompuServe, we had several custom tools. We'd boot off of a floppy, it'd do a minimal install, and then we'd go to another machine and shove things over to the new machine from a repository where we had an entire compiled code base of the system software for the Unix systems we were running there. Um, we customized it highly. It was good for one type of system, and we had some manual steps for adding additional drives and such as for a Usenet news server. But we had it pretty well automated, and the human involvement was minimal, but it was still there. Along came PXE booting, and things have gotten much simpler. And with some operating systems, it's literally you fire up the machine after you've mounted it in the rack, and you have it do its thing, and an hour or two later, or in some cases, just minutes later, you've got the system up and running. And the techniques vary from site to site. Uh, co-location sites have special tools for their needs and such, but if you've got a company that is doing it, they might be doing something else entirely. Of course, a lot of companies also tend to use Windows, which is a totally different story from Linux or any form of Unix out there. But I've been a software engineer for 35 plus years now. I started working on computers professionally in college. That would have been the 1980s. And in the late 80s, I got more involved in it, um, actually doing installs and equipment installations for auxiliary peripherals and things of that nature. Whereas before that, I'd mainly been working on hooking up terminals and doing system admin of adding users, things of that nature. And over the years, I've ended up building quite a collection of computers. And here's a picture of my current setup. I've got a number of computers that aren't mounted here. I've got some old computers, such as this one here and this one here, that are 4U servers, similar to what I used when I was working at Lucent Bell Labs, though different form factor. Um, those were compact PCI systems, which would be, well, later in my time there, they were compact PCI systems. We actually had, back in the days when I was working on Audix, we had Audix systems that would be quite similar to this, just different hardware inside. But I'm getting away from these systems here, and I've managed to acquire several old Dell servers over the years, which I've had a fondness for. Um, some Generation 6 machines about 10 years ago or so, um, when the second-hand channels started coming out with the Gen 9 servers, like the 1950 2950. I got a 2950, which enabled me to start being able to do virtual machines like we did when I was at Carnegie Mellon. That was a entirely different experience working there. We had a data center that was massive, and we had some tools there that enabled us to maintain the 1,000+ servers that were ultimately installed there when I left. But I've got some of the 1650s and such. I'm using them as shelves because I don't have shelves to put into this rack, and I need a different rack, and I don't want to get a shelf that fits this rack mounting method, which these are actually just round holes. I want to get a shelf that supports the more data center style square holes that you put little nut little nut catches on, little brackets that have a nut on them, because several of my servers have rails that have to go onto that form of rack mount. And that'll also actually alleviate some of the need for the shelves, because the things that I don't have mounted are generally the ones that have that sort of rails associated with them. But yeah, we've got several Athlon 2500 systems down here. And this here is another Athlon server, which I'm in the process of decommissioning. It's got a bunch of services on it. I've got LDAP running on it. I've got a DNS server running on there. I've got DHCP server running there, and a system called Cobbler, which I'm going to talk about here momentarily. And I'm trying to build a new machine on a Dell 720 that I've got up here, or actually it'd be this one right here, that's going to replace it, which will cut down my electric budget quite a bit. My electric runs me about $300 a month right now, so I've definitely got an incentive to power down some of these old machines even further and get it down to just a handful. But as a computer engineer, I need the servers to do various things. So let's get on with the topic. These days, two of the programs that you use often are something to do the actual boot install, which I use Cobbler, and then you use something such as Ansible, which is a product out of Red Hat that helps you do your configuration management and other maintenance tasks. It's great for changing, back in the day we used to run a TCL expect script to change passwords on however many servers that you had out there. These days it can be a simple little playbook that you run, and in Ansible it'll go out to all the various machines and automatically change the password for you. And it's as simple as saying, I want to change my password. Here's the old password. Here's the new password. And you can even have it use variables so that you could change a variable file and have your passwords rotate through from your highest security systems and move that password down to the next level server, to the next level, to the next level, so that your most trusted admins get the new password for the top level server, and it all you have to do is send out one password to each group, and they know that for the lower level servers, you end up with the previous month's password. So I'll show you Ansible. I've got an Ansible playbook that I'm using right now. But Cobbler, we have the ability to log back in there. No, thank you. I've got a couple web apps on this machine that collide on the password space. And so it causes me some grief. I've got to split them out. That's another great thing about things like virtual machines or um, containers is you can put them up as different host names, and so that the things that you have running out there don't end up colliding on their passwords, and you can have secure passwords. But we have distributions here. One of the reasons I'm going through this, besides the out of date nature of this machine and how old it is physically and such, um, this software here, which is Cobbler 2.8.3, it's an old unsupported version now, does not support Red Hat 9 or um, Rocky Linux 9. Rocky Linux having um, supplanted CentOS as a stable release that tracks the Red Hat Enterprise. But, we've got old Fedora core versions here as well. And I need to get the support for the newer versions of the software, which means I need to upgrade my Cobbler instance. And along with the distributions, we have profiles. So, for example, a build server running CentOS 7, a file server, a server specifically for a website that I help maintain. That this is just a development machine. An old work-related server that I no longer need because I no longer work for that company. A prototype server for a startup I was involved in. Here's CentOS 8 build server and some other machines down here. And before I skip to systems, I'll go to repos. Here's a whole bunch of repos that I've got. Notice that I've got them locally mirrored, and I no longer have some of these mirrors, so I'll end up cleaning up those in the whole process. We got a couple of boot images here, one of them being a non-boot image. It's just, if I need something to say, there's no boot image for it, I will throw it at memtest. Lots of Kickstart templates, Kickstart being the mechanism that Red Hat-based systems use for being deployed automatically, or even interactively on certain things, but automatically on others. Snippets are a little building block that the Kickstart templates can use. And for example, down here, I've got my packages for various machines that I've had. If I install Postgres 9.0 through 9.3 on CentOS, that's how those would be installed. And I actually need to update those as well. But right now, the Postgres server that I'm running is installed and upgraded on another machine that I won't be reinstalling for quite a while. So down here, we've got scripts that I've used. They're actually modeled off of scripts I wrote back at Bell Labs for the messaging servers back in the day. And that's almost 20 years ago now. But detect the disks and see how much disk space we've got and divvy it out to the various partitions. There's a Python 2 version, which is an old version that I'm just keeping around. Certain systems may still use Python too. I think CentOS 7 actually did. But then Python 3, um, I think Anaconda, at least in CentOS 8, and maybe CentOS 7, started using Python 3. And being the newer version of the language, it has slightly different syntaxes, slightly different system calls on a few instances. And so I've got two different versions there. And, I could go in here and edit them. And, here I am. I'm getting the information. I've actually got the ability to override sizes. So, but, I've got default sizes, 1 gig for a root, 4 gig for swap, a 4 gig temp, a 4 gig user, and a 4 gig var for a minimum disk. And then the larger disks, some of these come up 64 gig or more. But the real bread and butter is over here on the system distributions, and I've got quite a few. I also define my switches in here so that I've got a DHCP entry in here. That's where that no boot image comes into play, because if we were to look at one of those systems, it would indicate that it doesn't have a boot image, and it'd give the IP address and such. And, we've got CentOS 7 system, CentOS 8. We've got Fedora Core. Some of these I've not updated the actual Cobbler install, but they're running newer versions. And I've got about 70 servers here. We have one machine here that, had we had support for the Rocky Linux 9, Red Hat 9, it would have been used. But I've got variables defined here. It's a virtual machine. I've got some parameters in here. Networking in here. And I would have installed using Cobbler and just literally said cone --vert / virtual machine name. I'll show that in a later video. But I wanted to get something installed first, so I did a manual install. I don't often do a manual install, but this is probably the first manual install I've done, short of systems that did not support automated network boot installs in some time. So that's Cobbler. And as I said, I do a lot of virtual machines. The actual machine that we've been working on, here it is, Rocky Linux 9.2 Blue Onyx. I've got it set up. Since it's going to be a main server, it's got 4 CPUs out of 32 dedicated to it. I don't know why it said Sandy Bridge on here. I actually wanted it to copy the host configuration. So we'll See how that boots first. Yes, we'll apply that. We've given it 2 gig of RAM. We've got a virtual disk with 256 gig on it. Disk space is not an issue for me. I'm running probably in the neighborhood of 35 terabytes right now. But we've got a CD-ROM here, which normally I don't end up building in. We've got a network card here, which does virtual gigabit Ethernet. But let's log in. Excuse me. Make sure that it reboots with that change because I want it to always mirror the host configuration. And it seems to be coming up fine. This machine, when I configured it I had to copy SSH keys in it so that I didn't have to change my known host file. I've got a record of all my virtual machine SSH keys and a generated known host file to match those keys. So if I install a machine, I don't have to worry about key matching or anything like that. I've got the SSH server keys stored securely, and they can get installed on a machine when I install it, but I had to do that manually. Had to do a couple of other things manually just to get it up to a point where it could talk properly. The main thing though was the SSH. So here we are. We're going to leave that up, and I'm going to switch over to Ansible here in a second. Notice here I've got 2 snapshots. We got a post initial system load snapshot, and here we've got the SSH configured. So we can have this machine available to the network. So we'll put that there. And what I've done is I've developed a playbook that enables me to do additional customization. And that is here. And here we have it saying set up my auto mount file systems, and then it goes on to set up the DNS server, the DHCP server, the web server, and finally setting up Cobbler, and then doing some tweaks to some security settings. And I'm not worried about sharing these sorts of secrets because these machines are behind a firewall that allows nothing in onto this network. It's strictly an outbound network. So I've got that there. The main playbook is here, and we specify the host name, the user being used. We've got some pretests that we do first, and then we install a few extra pieces of software. And we're using the role for Pell. So all this, setting up the AutoFS would I copy in a couple config files here. That's fairly straightforward, but copying over even just a few files takes you a little bit of time to do. But for bind, again, install the software, enable the service. Real simple, but it takes a few minutes to do that. I'll skip down here to set up Cobbler, though. And we start off, we install the package, and we enable the service, but then I want to do a git init and add all the files and commit them in 2 different directories. This would take some time. And that's 3 separate commands, 2 different directories, so you've got a total of 8 commands there. And you've got to wait for them to finish up. And then you get down here, you've got some template files for DNS generation, named configuration, and reverse the DHCP and the named and the reverse IP tables. We've got some setting files here. We make sure that we've got the Cobbler user for me in there, and that it doesn't have the Cobbler user with its default password in there. And then we've got zone templates. As you can see, there's a fair amount of stuff going on that would be subject to a lot of typos, particularly like me if I happen to be doing this late at night. But here's the nice thing. Oh, and there's one other thing about the playbook. Get over here. Our pre-tasks. We actually set up the VM to reboot to a particular snapshot, and we install the EPEL repository so that we can install things from it. So you can see it's a fairly complex task, but here's how we do it. I'm in the directory where the playbooks are, and I just say Ansible playbook pel.yaml. And let's add a time to it. And off we go. Notice this is a VM. It reset the VM. It's rebooting. And here it comes. And there it is. There it goes. We're now doing some other things. Here we're setting up the EPEL release package. We're installing the NFS client because AutoFS requires the NFS client to be installed. And oddly, the package requirements for the RPM don't indicate that. So AutoFS, we're copying the files over. And we've got the bind. I use my bind in a change root for security purposes. Everything for safety here. Deny everything, allow only specific things, and do it in secluded environments like containers or virtual machines or things of that nature. So we're installing that, and that'll take a little bit longer. But while we're waiting, if you happen to watch this, I'll be putting in the comments a link to a couple of things, and drop a comment down below on what you'd like to see on the follow-ups for this, because I will be doing a second video at least where I complete the configuration for the Cobbler server. And I'll show the beginning of that on the tail end of this video, but the actual final configuration, I'll include a video about that. But ask for suggestions. I'd like to get this channel started and show off some of my knowledge to help others out there. There we go. AutoFS is enabled. Here we go with DHCP server. That's enabled. Copy things over. HTTPD's being installed. And as soon as that gets installed, we'll be installing Cobbler. And here you can see the messages coming up from the items being enabled. But as soon as this finishes up, I'll show off a utility that I've got up on GitHub. You're welcome to copy it and use it if you're doing like me, going from a 2.8 install to that might not be that clean to a clean install. And here we're installing Cobbler, and once it gets done with this, it'll fly right along. But yeah, subscribe, drop me comments, like the video, and notice we're copying various files over, like I mentioned. And excuse me, summer allergies. But there it's doing the install of Emacs and Xterm and a few key programs that I want to use on this deal. And the nice thing about an Ansible playbook is if I get to the point where I no longer want to have those on there, but I want to do everything from scratch, one thing I'm doing as I do the configuration is I'm doing things in a way that I can, for example, untar a file to copy files from the old machine to the new one, or I'll have a shell script to run commands from the command line. And we'll take a look at that one here in just a minute. In the meantime, this should be finishing up here soon. And one of the things is every time you run yum or DNF, it takes a while to do its housekeeping and talk to the servers to update the files. So that's one reason why going from a snapshot, a machine snapshot, if you're building machines, sometimes is the way to go. Literally clone a machine, copy a file. And the speed of producing machine literally drops down to the time it takes to copy an image file. And some of those can be set up rather quickly. In fact, I do believe that's what Amazon and certain other sites do, is they have images that they copy real rapidly and put into the machine that's going to be running your site and does a few configuration tasks and such. And there we go. Notice here DHCP failed, which is our one failed here. Skip 2. I've got some debug steps that I'm not running right now. We had, excuse me, 44 commands that were okay. 33 of them changed something on the system. And runtime was 7 minutes, 20 seconds. I've actually had this execute with very little changes from what it is right now in under 5 minutes. So let's pop over onto Pell. And if you're wondering about my XR login, it's literally a X term that fires off an SSH7 or an SSH session. And it's talking to the web server, and the web server's talking to the Cobbler server. And as we can see here, we've got no items configured in here. And if I pull up a web browser, I'll pull this one up. And Cobbler webs. And not found. I don't know if they've changed it for 3.3 yet or not. I've got to read the fine manuals. RTFM, folks, RTFM. But, you know, I'm getting this here, so I've now got it up where I can start doing the configurations and such. But we've got to have the configuration files to do with it. And that's where the utility, I call it Cobbler-extractor, comes in. And this is up on GitHub. I'll put a link down below. But let's see. We set the Python path to the directory above here. And here you can see it's actually spitting out all the Cobbler commands to add the systems and the repositories and everything else. And I know that there's some tweaks that need to be done on this. Um, where's my Pelt window? Okay, where's Xterms? Xterms are right here. uh, Bash, Cobbler 2023. I ran this utility a couple of days ago, so I've got the script already. But as we can see, we're getting errors. C time's supposed to be float. While it is in the script, I got to find out what's going on there, or just not use it. KS meta, KOps, those apparently have changed. Template remote kickstarts has changed. So there are some additional changes which I need to do some manual reading. But this will finish up, and when I run Cobbler report, I suspect I won't have anything there. But if I did, I could just go back and rerun the playbook again and have a totally clean system that I knew that I could reproduce at will. And that's one of the nice things about virtual machine snapshots and playbooks and installs from Cobbler is it's very repeatable. I can spin up an entirely new machine identical to what I had with a few minor tweaks, sometimes the tweaks having to be made really early on in the process. And I can do it with just a few keystrokes or clicks of buttons. And there we are. And if we do a Cobbler report, we didn't even get a distro. So that's it for this video, folks. It's a rather raw video. I might edit it, but it turns out it was a little bit longer than I expected. 45 minutes. I was actually hoping to come in under 30. But as an introduction, let me know what you think. You know, I probably should have split it into 2 parts on this one. But give it a watch. Let me know what you think down below and give me suggestions. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.